Hello, everybody. Welcome to the home stretch. Final round of games. I think we're around, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 games left to go, but yeah, they're getting quicker and
The
quicker.
ice for Brad. I'm like, home stretch, huh? That's a long home stretch.
We're going to start it off with a game that I didn't really know for sure what the reception would be like, but Ben is pretty excited for Psychonauts 2.
I'm excited for you to recount this because I saw this at Judges Week, but obviously I've seen about a million games since then. So I remember it being jolly. I remember little points, but...
Yeah, I have some notes. Before talking about Psychonauts 2, though, which I'm really excited to dig into, just the presentation itself was wonderful. So it was actually Tim Schafer himself doing the presentation, and he just has to be one of, like, the most confident, humorous, and, like, playful presenters. He was just so on point, but very casual about it at the same time.
Nice.
Like the kid in school who got all A's but never studied. That's kind of the vibe that Tim Schafer was giving off.
He's been to a couple E3s.
Yeah. Obviously a veteran and a legend in his own right, but that really came across in the presentation. It was just him talking and cracking jokes was really fun to be a part of, for sure. But the game itself also really impressed. Obviously a game that a lot of people are looking forward to. I mean, what we saw is the first level. So you're playing as Raz. You are in the Psychonauts headquarters, and kind of making some commentary on some corporate culture. It seems pretty bleak, but you know that the villain from the first game, Dr. Lobato, was working for somebody. Like there has to be somebody above him that's kind of pulling the strings, and you try to trick him, and you try to say like, "Oh, hey, you're Employee of the Year." And everybody goes around and they're like, in order for this Employee of the Year to be valid, we're going to need the person you work for to sign it so we can verify they're actually Employee of the Year. And obviously it's just a ruse to figure out who he's working for. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I really want to be Employee of the Year. And so Raz starts sneaking up behind him, and you're following him. And eventually Dr. Lobato catches on. And he starts doing some Psychonauts shenanigans where he like extends the hallway, and then you eventually dive into his mind. And the whole game up to the whole demo, I should say, up to this point, is pretty charming, has a good look about it, just like you would remember from Psychonauts, and pretty funny. But once you're inside Dr. Lobato's mind, that's where it gets really, really good, just because of the environment. So Dr. Lobato is like this deranged dentist. And
That's why all the teeth.
Exactly. So you're when you're in his mind, you have like all of these like nerve endings, and you have these doors. You can see it right there. They have these zipper on them, and all the teeth are together, and it just looks nasty. And so it's just really cool. They much like Psychonauts 1, they have so many different ideas going on, and the way that they kind of visualize mental concepts. So you have for those who didn't play the first game, you have the sensors who try to reject anything that doesn't belong in the mind, and they have the stamps, and they'll come at you. And then you have doubts as well that physically manifest as enemies that you're fighting against. And yeah, there's one point where you have to like burn pictures as well, and that's pretty fun. And so there's just a ton of variety, and it's just cool seeing how they try to represent the mind, I think, is really the biggest takeaway that I have from Psychonauts 2. Brandon, do you have any big takeaways that you came away from Psychonauts 2?
I just felt it was a great introduction to the one thing you can see at the beginning of this trailer, actually, that is this really cool aesthetic intro to the demo, and I wonder if it's going to persist in the actual game. I imagine. But you see a human brain, and you move over the brain and get really close to it, and then all the little like grooves of the brain start to get segmented into little kind of more right, like 90-degree angles, and then those become the cubicles, and then you move into space. And so the whole thing just flowed really well. And one thing that I'm remembering now about combat that was really fun, there's actually some abilities shown off in this trailer that I don't know if we were demoed at the time, but there was a lot of using one enemy's weakness to attack another enemy. So you would physically like remove a weapon from one enemy and use it on someone else, or grab someone out of the sky and throw them at another character. And so and that was demonstrated really well. It's really cool seeing tools like that being represented in a demo, not in a demo, but a live demo. So like when I saw this at Judges Week, it was cool seeing you kind of get the sense of playfulness of, yes, I'm doing this to show you that this mechanic works and how this works in the actual game, but it's fun to discover those things as well.
Combat in Psychonauts 1, or at least what I remember from Psychonauts 1, is definitely a little awkward. Here, it was a hands-off demo, but everything just flowed together more smoothly than it did in the first game. And just him using basic punches and then using like the psychic blast that he had and then the telekinesis and then the incinerate. It just seemed like everything flowed together much better than it did in the first game. But another big takeaway is just, again, the little characters that they were introducing. So they had that, you're in this dentist's mind and there are these like mafia teeth that have like these mafia accents, and they're obsessed with getting like gold fillings. Essentially, they're all about like, oh, hey Frankie, we gotta get him, and then you blast one of them, and they goes, no, Frankie. And just these little bit characters, they're smoking cigars, and you see them twice throughout the demo. But just a good, cute, wholesome bit that it does. Yeah. The posters that you're burning that I mentioned before. What those are is this guy, the boss of Dr. Lobato, has gotten into his head so much that those are don't snitch posters. And so you're trying to tear all those down to get him to open up a little bit. And the doubt enemies are carrying anvils is what they are.
Oh, that's right.
And so what you can do is you can use your telekinesis, grab the anvils from them, and then throw them at other enemies. So some cool interactions there.
There was also just a lot of perception play. So, running on what you think is the floor, but then you get to the end of the hallway and you naturally walk onto the ceiling, but that's actually the floor of the next environment. And you can see in the trailer, but just this like stretching of the hallway. Like there's a lot of really fun things like that just are kind of what make this world really unique and really, I imagine it's got to be so fun just conceptualizing like a lot of the areas in this game because really the sky's the limit. And it seemed like they really wanted to surprise you. I love because I didn't, I'm familiar with the style and the story of Psychonauts 1, but I didn't finish it. And so like, I didn't know they didn't work together, and that a fan of Psychonauts 1 would be like, wait a minute, this doctor doesn't work with them. What's going on? And so I actually was kind of like, oh, interesting story. He seems like a villain character, but they're just kind of, playing around with him and giving him this award or something. And so that moment when they're like, take this to your boss. And he's like, okay, thanks everybody. And like wanders in the hallway, and then they all like, okay, like everyone else. I was like, oh, okay, they're hiding. And then like he's in his like suit with his neat hair. Yeah. And then by the time it goes back around for him, he takes the goggles and puts them on and starts running. And so like it felt like a really exciting return to like this clearly like looks a lot better than the original Psychonauts, and we're definitely playing on the weight that it's been for a lot of these fans. But at the same time, it's like haven't skipped a beat. We're right back where we were, same cast, same style. I think this. I think it's just so charming and so interesting and just so unique and something that just reminds me of like this is kind of what I tune into Double Fine for. Yeah. Is this kind of like reverence, like where I have not played Psychonauts, like I just played a lot of other stuff they've done in the past that not only does this seem to remind me of, but I miss it. Like I like After Party and maybe like the latest Leisure Suit Larry. Like there's just only like a couple franchises that do stuff that's this zany and weird. Yeah. Like a zipper wall of teeth. It's just who's doing that.
Yeah, and it's also I feel like saying kind of the bits and the jokes in this E3 impressions, it doesn't come across as well as it did in the demo, where like I actually found myself chuckling just because of the strong visual element that was accompanying these jokes. And so I don't know. I think if you're a fan of the first game's humor, you're really gonna like this. And Psychonauts is actually a game that Abby and I were playing together, and she just adores Psychonauts. And we haven't seen the very end. They haven't seen the end yet. I think we're like 2/3 of the way through. But this was very strong motivation to see the rest. So.
My buddy Brent built EasyAllies.com. He would quote all the time, and I finally asked him one day, I'm like, what quote is that? But he would be like, I am the milkman. My milk is delicious. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, it's a Psychonauts joke. You don't even get it. But again, just so absurd, so over the top, and surprising. You want to you're excited about every single turn because you know it's going to throw you for a loop somehow.
That was actually something that Tim talked about during the presentation. where he was like, what's really fun from a creative standpoint about Psychonauts is it's a game where you're going in people's minds, and we can make anything that we want, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so we're really like they're really uninhibited from just doing absolutely crazy stuff and trying out a whole bunch of new things.
But there's a bit of fear there, you know, like you are behind enemy lines, like you are in a place. It's like Inception,
Yeah.
like you shouldn't be here, and you can see the world kind of turn on you and recognize a foreign, you know, threat. And so it's playful and silly, but there is a little bit of dread there. There is a little bit, like you could see in the end, the trailer that they showed, E3, ends on a creepy note. And so it's going to be interesting to see like those moments where they're like, haha, we had you with the cutesy stuff. And then, you know, what about this scary imagery or like, you know, shriek or,
Yeah.
you know, spooky moment?
Yeah, so up next is another interesting Ben game, Rune Factory 4 Special.
Ooh.
Okay, so I have to say, Rune Factory 4 Special, in the best way, has to be the weirdest demo that I did at E3.
Oh,
Yes.
sure.
Really?
And I walked away like pretty pleased from the whole encounter.
Because it was
So
DS or was it 3DS? I'm trying to remember.
Rune Factory 4
Yeah.
was 3DS. I have almost no experience with Rune Factory, except I've been curious about it, and people have told me how good Rune Factory is. And I have a copy of it on 3DS. I put it in and just like saw the intro for a few minutes, but beyond that, I did not know anything really about Rune Factory. Like I know what kind of game it is, but I don't have a lot of history with the series. And man, this demo, so I always get a little bit discouraged because I've had other E3 demos that are like this, where they just kind of plop you into it and they don't explain anything, and you're kind of left to your own devices to
Right.
figure out what's going to happen. Actually worked in this game's favor perfectly. So Rune Factory has these different components to it where you like have a garden and you're like taking care of things, but you're also helping out villagers with their quests, and you're also going into dungeons and doing combat and all this stuff. And it just has this kind of awesome, quirky tone about it. And I think a good way of kind of exemplifying this is I went out in the town and I was just talking to people, trying to figure out what was going on. And this intro cutscene plays for this character. And it's the weirdest intro cutscene I've seen for any character ever. Her name is Xiao Pai. And all it is, it's like a few seconds long, and she kind of looks behind her, and the camera like swivels around her a little bit and then like presses into her butt, and then it just ends and you're talking to her. And I was like, what the hell is happening?
What is happening?
Yeah, I can't really give you a good example because it gets a little bit weirder from there, where you're talking to her and she's just this really bubbly, like fun-loving character who is clumsy. And I noticed like this option where I could press the right bumper and I could like butt in with something, and I saw that I could confess my love. Just like right then and there, I could confess my love for Xiao Pai.
Whoa.
And so of course I did.
Yes.
Of course you did.
And I was expecting her to be like weirded out, and she was like, "No, I love you too." I was like, "All right."
What?
That escalated quickly.
Yeah.
So E3 worked out really well for you.
Right. Yeah. And so that
Nice.
was great. I thought it was so funny when it happened.
That's really funny.
And another character.
Every day's filled with adventure.
Yeah, there are a couple of other characters that stood out. So you have a blacksmith in the town, you know, like every
Yeah.
RPG. But what's great about this guy's name is Bado, and he's just this lazy piece of shit. Like he just says to you like, I want to have a job where I work as little as possible. That's what I want in my life. And
I mean,
Yeah.
most people would.
Yeah.
But
But so you can also ask people to go adventure with you. And I was talking to the attendant, and he was like, "Yeah, if you ask Bado to go adventuring with you," he's like, "No, I think that like job is coming in where I don't have to work." Just this completely lazy piece of shit, which I love. I thought he was also very charming. And then there was Nancy, who was a cheerful nurse, and she's like being so welcoming. But then the last thing she says is like, "Hey, don't call me old to my face." And you're like, okay.
Whoa, what?